Hey guys, today I'm here to give you some Asian American author recommendations. Now in the US and I believe also in Canada, May is Asian Pacific American Heritage Month. I don't know why that's so hard to say, but I thought this would be the best time to give you guys some of these kinds of recommendations. I also recently did a search on YouTube for Asian American authors or Asian American author recommendations, and I was really kind of horrified to find that nothing came up. There were a few recorded author interviews and a few speaking events that had been recorded and put up, but no booktuber had sat down to make a video like this. And I was actually kind of horrified that in a community as big as BookTube, that has been putting as much emphasis on diversity and talking about African American authors and Latino authors as we have over the past year or so, that nobody had thought to do anything like this before. So I thought I would just kind of seize the moment and do this myself, even though I don't normally make big recommendation videos like this. Of course, I just want to put this out there that this is by no means an exhaustive list. There are so many Asian American authors out there that I just haven't gotten around to reading yet, and I just really wanted to focus on the authors that I have read and feel like I can recommend to you guys. Okay, so the point of this video is that I want to touch on as many different author categories as possible. So I'm going to start off with a poetry recommendation, and this is The Palace of Contemplating Departure by Brin Saito. Brin Saito is a very young poet. This is actually her first published collection of poems, and she is of Korean and Japanese descent. Now, I am by no means educated enough in poetry to kind of evaluate this collection for you guys, but I will say that I found it actually amazingly accessible. I enjoyed several of the poems in here, even though I don't normally gravitate towards poetry, and one that really stood out to me in particular was called The Gathering Mind. Next, in case you guys are into reading plays, I have a playwright recommendation for you guys, and that is David H. Hwang, as in H-W-A-N-G. Hwang. He's written several plays, the two most well-known of which are M. Butterfly or Madam Butterfly and Yellowface. And although I haven't actually gotten to read the scripts of any of these, I did get to go see a production of Yellowface when my uncle was actually acting in it. Yellowface is a play that really deals with conceptions of Asianness, and I would highly, highly recommend it. It really served to spark very interesting discussion among my family. Next up, I want to talk about Amy Tan, and I know that she's most well known for her novels, particularly the Joy Luck Club, but I haven't actually read any of those, and so I wanted to talk about some of the children's books that she's done. I personally think it's really important to start exposing kids to different cultures as soon as possible, because I think if more people were raised with a kind of multicultural mindset, the world would actually be a way better place. Starting off, we have The Chinese Siamese Cat, and this is about a little cat named Sagwa who lives in the magistrate's palace. Sagwa is a very curious, naughty little kitten, and one day she's running around the magistrate's office and happens to get covered in ink and accidentally alters a scroll that has a new law on it. Basically, this is just a really cute little story. The illustrations are by Gretchen Shield, and they're absolutely fantastic. And they're very, very colorful and just absolutely beautiful. This next children's book is also written by Amy Tan and illustrated by Gretchen Shields, and it's called The Moon Lady. It's set during the Moon Festival and basically follows a young girl's kind of magical realist experience with the Moon Lady. Again, the illustrations in here are just absolutely gorgeous. I also have a graphic novel favorite for you guys, which I'm sure you've all heard of, and this is American Born Chinese by Jin Wang Yang. This follows a teenage boy who has to deal with the fact that he's one of the few Asians in his high school and that he just doesn't really look like or fit in exactly with all of the Caucasian students. There are also a couple of parallel storylines in here, and again, the art is fantastic. Yang also has several other graphic novels which I have not read, so I will link his author Goodreads page down below, and you should definitely go check him out. Moving into a more adult or general fiction authors, I want to preface this by saying that most of these I discovered by taking an Asian American lit class in undergrad, so that's why these might be a little bit more on the literary side, or why they might have a bunch of sticky notes in them. First up is Sightseeing, and this is a short story collection by the Thai-American author Ratawat Lapcharoensap. This is a little bit different than everything else I'm going to talk about because it's not actually set in America, but it's set in Thailand, and still deals with similar themes of identity. But I actually really enjoyed this. I haven't read all of the stories in here, but if I was going to recommend one short story to you out of this collection, I would actually recommend the title short story. And in case you really like short stories and you just want to sample a bunch of authors all at once, I would highly recommend checking out this collection, which is Charlie Chan is Dead Too, At Home in the World. This is a fantastic way to dip your toes in and just sample a bunch of Asian American authors at once without having to go out and buy individual books for each author. I have no idea how many people there are in here, and my sticker covers up the back, but all of these people are in the book. So it's a really good way of getting into this. This book is introduced and edited by Jessica Hagedorn, who I also want to talk about in regards to her novel, The Gangster of Love. Jessica Hagedorn is a Filipino-American woman, just like the main character of this novel, Rocky Rivera, who is a bit of a wild child, and this kind of follows her during the 1960s through the 1980s, both her life in San Francisco and then her journeys to Manhattan, New York, as she kind of tries to find herself and separate herself from her mother, who is kind of an overbearing, equally crazy woman. If you are into sex, drugs, and rock and roll, this is going to be the book for you, and I actually really enjoyed reading this when I was in San Francisco because Hagedorn relies a lot on the locations in this book to kind of set the tone. Next, I want to recommend The Gangster We're All Looking For by Le Thi Yim Thuy, and she is a Vietnamese American author. Now, this is a book about 6 Vietnamese refugees who come over during the 1970s to establish a new life for themselves in San Diego, and it basically follows kind of the disintegration and tension within the main character's family and her own experiences trying to deal with the fact that she lost a brother who never made it out of Vietnam. This is a lot darker than most of the other stuff I've recommended, and I honestly personally didn't enjoy it as much as the other authors, but if you're really into looking into the psychological effects of kind of displacement and of being a minority in a different country, this is very interesting, and the writing style is very beautiful and very imagery heavy. And finally, the last author I want to talk to you guys about and recommend to you is Jhumpa Lahiri, and I have quite a few things to talk about here. Jhumpa Lahiri is a very well-spoken, very educated Bengali American who actually won the Pulitzer for her very first published work ever, the collection of short stories Interpreter of Maladies. I actually wrote my senior thesis in undergrad on 2 of the short stories in this collection, which I think is absolutely fantastic as a whole. I've reread it a couple of times outside of research purposes, and I find her writing absolutely beautiful, even though I don't know if I can put into words exactly what it is that I love about it. It's very lyrical, very subdued, and I highly encourage you all to go out and read something of hers. The short stories in this collection focus mainly on relationships, whether they are intergenerational or romantic, and they focus specifically on Bengali American relationships, whether they are Bengali immigrants or second-generation Bengali Americans. Last night I was actually listening to an old interview that Lahiri gave on the BBC World Book Club podcast, and I thought that she said something really interesting when she mentioned that she strives not to deliver generalities. She doesn't want to talk about Bengali Americans as a whole. She doesn't want to talk about immigrants or minorities as a whole. She just wants to focus on her specific characters and their specific situations and relationships. And that's actually something that I think is really amazing about her writing, is that she writes these stories that center around Bengali American characters, but I feel like the messages in here are very universal and can apply to pretty much anyone. So again, I just obviously love her a lot, and I would highly suggest you go check out this collection in particular. She also has a second collection of short stories. This is Unaccustomed Earth, and if you are interested in reading this, I would highly suggest that you go check out that BBC podcast after reading this. I will try and find it and try and link it below if I can. I've only actually read one of the short stories in here. It's called Hell Heaven, and if you don't read the whole collection, I would highly suggest you at least check out that one story. She also has written 2 novels, the first of which is The Namesake, and this was actually also made into a film by Meera Nair, and I have seen the film. I haven't actually read the novel, but the story is absolutely amazing. It follows a young man named Gogol and his struggles to kind of separate himself from his more traditional Bengali American parents and determine how much of an American he wants to be and how much of his heritage he wants to hold on to. I haven't actually read this one yet, but I am hoping to soon, and the movie again is fantastic. If you read Interpreter of Maladies before you read this, you can actually see how she was kind of practicing some of the plot lines and some of the characters in some of her short stories, but I don't think that detracts from the short stories or the novel at all, but again, I will probably do a review on this once I have read it. And lastly, in 2013, she published The Lowland, which I have yet to read and actually know absolutely nothing about, but just based on the fact that I know I love her writing style, I will be reading this hopefully this year, if not sooner rather than later. And I just thought I would mention this since I am talking about most of her other work. All right, you guys, I don't know if you can hear it in my voice, but I'm feeling a little parched and a little croaky, so I'm glad I made it through, but I hope that was helpful to some of you guys. I hope that those of you who are really interested in continuing to diversify found that interesting and that you will try and pick some of these authors up. If you guys have any other Asian American author recommendations, I would love to see other people do videos like this, or maybe just leave some comments down below, not only for me, but just so that the community can look at them and we can help spread the word. All right. I need to go get something to drink, so I hope you guys enjoyed the video. I hope you are having a great day, and I will see you next time. Bye!